monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings. Join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Well, good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode I don't know what.
36.
36, okay.
Yeah.
But we're back this evening. Of course, joined by my best friend and co-host, as you all know him, Lesson Cabbage.
That's
How are you
right.
doing tonight, buddy?
I'm, hey, Tom, thanks for joining in, buddy. I am thoroughly exhausted, so if I sound like I'm rambling tonight, please pay no mind. It's probably no different than any other night, but just to kind of give everybody a heads up, we have been a little MIA recently. Not that we don't want to do the show anymore, so we hope people aren't thinking that. It's just Chad and I, with the summer going on and everything and having the kids home, and Chad started a new job. I got projects from clients, and it was just a cluster F, if you all can relate. And now that school's back in session and the kids are gone, we could kind of get a little bit more time to prepare, I guess, for our show. So we're planning on getting back weekly like we were before and bringing you guys some, entertainment and hopefully some education on some different topics. But tonight, Chad, I guess tonight's kind of a little bit of a mishmash.
Yeah. Tonight we don't really have, it's not going to be a topic-driven show. We're going to talk about a few different things. Some of the stuff we've posted recently on Facebook, and we're going to go back, and since we didn't really get a chance, since I investigated St. Albans, to kind of recap the evening there, we're going to talk about that a little bit and kind of just give you guys some ideas on some upcoming shows and stuff like that. So we just kind of want to get that out tonight. We didn't want to go another week without getting on and saying hi to everybody and kind of talking. And, so I think there's some stuff that we'll discuss that'll be interesting. And I think you guys, feel free to comment like we always have you guys do. And, if you guys have some stories that relate to these topics, please, type away quickly and we'll kind of hit them and maybe we can get some more Q&A going.
That's right. And before we start talking about any of those topics, one thing I do want to bring to everybody's attention is this weekend, Labor Day weekend in Portland, Maine, is the 3rd annual International Cryptozoology Conference. I believe it's Saturday and Sunday. The event goes all day long. And one of our good buddies that we became friends with through the show, Andy McGrath, he's the author of Beasts of Britain. He's actually going to be there this weekend, and I believe he's talking on Sunday about the Beasts of Britain and what he's got going on over there. So if anybody's in the area or you're close enough to do a road trip, I do believe tickets are still available, but don't quote me. I'm sure you could buy tickets at the door. Go check that out and see what's going on up there and tell Andy we said hi.
My niece is waving at the screen. Her father just messaged that she's waving, so I went to say hi, Bella.
Ah, that's sweet.
Actually, I spoke to Andy this morning. Him and I were talking a little bit, and I said to him, kind of just wished him good luck because I know, coming over to the States and doing a presentation, a lot of travel involved, and him and I were talking about some stuff that may or may not happen in the future of us all working together. So we'll release more on that as we get a little bit further into it. But we are definitely, Andy is a good friend of ours. He is kind of like a brother to us. He's basically like the unofficial 3rd member of the Explorers in a way. He doesn't know that yet, but he's basically one of us.
Andy, these are things that, if you're listening, buddy, these are things Chad and I talk about is we're unofficially making you the unofficial 3rd mic.
We did a show with him and it was so interesting because usually, as you guys have watched the shows, we usually, we get the guest off, then we recap a little bit, we chit chat, we talk to you guys, and then we shut down the show and Les and I, review the show afterwards. We did the show with Andy. We stayed on with Andy, and Andy was nice enough. If you guys remember, it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning his time.
Yeah, yeah.
He ended up spending another 45 minutes to an hour of just me, Les, and him talking about, cryptozoology, paranormal, life in general. And, he's really become, we message each other probably, I would say at least I message him once every 2 weeks. I know Les and him talk a lot.
Mhm.
So we, if you're in his area, please,
Yeah, check out that conference.
yeah, and he will be in Kentucky, I believe, next weekend or something like that, or this coming weekend.
What is, the name of the conference escapes me right now. I believe it's the Kentucky Crypticon.
I think it's Kentucky Crypticon. I think it's like Harlan, Kentucky, or something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that information readily available, but I'm sure y'all could find it on Facebook or online. The Kentucky Crypticon, I believe, is what it's called. And like I said, Andy and other really great researchers and presenters are going to be there, and they're going to give their spiels and whatnot. So look it up, check it out, and if you guys are able, go and see them. So I wish I could, but I don't think that's going to happen. So aside from all that, what is it?
I was going to say, Les and I had planned on going, and actually we were planning on going as I'm driving to St. Albans. And if any of you guys read my recap on St. Albans, my lovely SUV broke down 1.8 miles from St. Albans, and I spent the last month trying to find a new vehicle. So that has basically taken up all my travel and expendable cash for a few months now.
I hear that. Yep. So I guess to get on to one of our first mini topics, one of the things that we had posted on our Facebook page was about
an evil topic.
Very evil, with laser beams attached to its freaking title. So this topic that we're going to be talking about is mysterious green fireball coincides with Yowie sighting in Australia. And this little report comes from mysteriousuniverse.org, and it was written by Brett Tingley. Basically, it says Australia's most infamous ape man was reportedly seen in Queensland this week, and the timing of the sighting coincided with another infamously anomalous event. Could the two be related? And it goes on to say that on Monday, July 30th, Katrina Ayers was driving north on Roma on the Carnarvon Highway, taking her time to avoid hitting a kangaroo, which happened to be in the road. The kangaroo, which was happened to be on the road. She says, while cruising at a slow, safe speed, of course, you have to put that little highlight in there. Aries spotted what she thought was a large rock by the side of the road. As she got closer, she reports the rock stood up, revealing itself to be a large, hairy humanoid creature standing over a kangaroo carcass. Ayers estimated the beast stood roughly 152 centimeters or 5 feet tall and described its hair as an auburn color. Ayers shared the sighting with the Australian Yowie Research Group, which posted Ayers' description of the incident to their Facebook page. Thanks. The impression was spot on. Thanks, Matt. I won't read the rest in Australian, though. While a single eyewitness testimony usually isn't noteworthy, the timing of the Yowie sighting may add a bit of weirdness to this incident. On the same day as the reported Yowie encounter, numerous eyewitnesses reported a strange object streaking luminously across the Queensland sky, leaving a trail of green fire behind it. Some witnesses reported the fireball as a bright white and yellow ball with an amazing tail of blue, green, orange, and white, assumingly burning gas. Descriptions which would seem to imply a meteor or an asteroid burning up in the atmosphere, which usually that was my kind of initial thought when I was reading the report, is that was probably a meteorite or something falling. Others, however, described the unidentified aerial phenomenon as a dark rectangular object leaving a jet flame in its wake. The onlooker even described the object as like nothing he had seen before and moving in ways which implied advanced technology due to its maneuverability. Then it goes on to say that a UCLA astronomer, Ian McLean, meanwhile, assured the Queensland public with 99.99% certainty that it was merely an Aquarian or Capricornian meteor shower. However, reports of green fireballs are a common theme in UFO research, and the U.S. military even took an interest in them at the height of the flying saucer era. Finally concluding that the phenomena are likely man-made, could this meteor have been something else? And it concludes the timing of the two incidents in strange. Has Yowie upgraded his methods of transportation? Could the Aboriginal ape man actually be a kangaroo-hungry extraterrestrial stopping by for a midsummer snack? Or freaking people out with his odd green spacecraft? Or could one woman's misidentification of a kangaroo in mourning merely be coincidental with a not too rare astronomical event? So that's about that.
My first question is, why was my mom in Australia? I mean, 5 foot tall, auburn hair. It's my mom.
down to a T, right?
Now, like,
go ahead.
Kind of thinking about where Queensland is in Australia. That would be the northeastern area of Australia, which would be like the Great Barrier Reef. It'd be close to Papua New Guinea. That section of Australia up there, which I think is where the Australian Blue Mountains are, which is a hotbed for paranormal, cryptozoology, and ufology sightings. There's a lot of stories in that area between the Yowie and paranormal ghost hitchhikers and stuff like that, phantom hitchhikers, and a lot of UFO sightings occur along those long stretches of highway at night in those areas, even some during the day. I know Mysterious Universe, where we got this story from, they're out of Australia, and they cover a lot of stuff with the Blue Mountain and a lot of the folklore and legends of the Blue Mountain. So, and they usually put out an episode a week.
Well, I don't know. Like reading the report, and there really wasn't much else to find on this incident. My vote kind of goes to, it was just coincidental that this person had seen something, whether it be a Yowie or a misidentified kangaroo. There was only one person that had said it had an odd flight pattern or was able to maneuver intelligently. Again, I think it was just a meteorite, because the description is kind of telltale to a typical meteorite. And again, I think the two incidences coinciding, I think it was just by chance. I don't think there was any relation to the two.
Well, I mean, there are so many strange Yowie sightings in Australia. Like, they have stories of Yowies in neighborhoods, like in housing areas, stealing clothing off of wash lines and running off with it. They have, I mean, the Yowie stories there are quite interesting in some of the depth of character Yowies have developed in some of these stories. Like, there was one that was repeatedly seen in a small town in the Queensland area where it was stealing women's clothing off of wash lines and then like running away in such a way that it was almost trying to put the clothing on.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, like they do have some out there stories. My question kind of would always be, as an investigator, I've done private and criminal investigation and stuff like that. Would be, first of all, how long was this lady on the road? Is she in that state where your mind, like I said, that one time my wife and I were driving home and I saw a deer that I thought was a kangaroo. I wasn't even on the road for 45 minutes at that point, but I had been out in the sun all day and in the heat. And all of a sudden we're driving down the road. I saw the head and I'm like, oh my God, is that a kangaroo? And she's like, no, honey, that's a deer. So how long was she on the road? Was it just a kangaroo? Because you see a lot of videos now with animals showing sympathy for deceased members of their groupings.
Mm-hmm. It's
You know,
funny that you said that. I had just seen 2 videos recently. One where there were 2 stray dogs. I don't know. I think it was in China or something like that. And one was struck in the middle of a busy highway.
Highway, yeah.
Yeah, and the one dog was obviously mourning the loss of its companion and was like scratching at it and trying to wrap its front legs to pull it off of the road, which I thought was very surprising. I've seen videos where a raccoon, one of them was hit, the other one actually fell over. It looked like it was in distress over the loss of its friend or companion or whatever. I've seen squirrels act that way too, where one of them got hit and the other one would try and pull it off the road and move it around trying to wake it up. And so I mean, in that aspect, I think animals have a lot more emotion than people give them credit for, and I think they're far more intelligent than people give them credit for. But again, like you said, how long was she on the road? And being they are in Australia, it is very hot down there. Has she been driving a long time? Was she getting fatigued? Was she, being affected by the intense heat, if it were, intense at the time? It could be a whole combination. And when she saw the animal, whatever it was, again, and again too, if it was hot, and depending on the distance of that of where it was in relation to herself, was it distorted from like a heat mirage? You know what I mean? Like sometimes when the heat, the vapors kind of distort, like a straight line looks all kind of wavy until you get up on it, and that you get a little bit above that vapor zone, that vapor barrier or whatever, and then it straightens back out. So could it have just been, a distortion of what was really there? Was it just her mind playing tricks on her, like you said, from the heat? Could be a multitude of things.
I mean, it also could actually be a Yowie. I mean, if they exist, could it have been one? Yeah, possible. I mean, but I think, as an investigator, you got to look at those details first. Like you've got to examine, how many times has this woman seen a kangaroo? Being from Australia, probably more so than any of us have.
Right.
But at the same time, kangaroos come in different sizes. You're used to kangaroos that are this size, and all of a sudden you're out in an area where they grow bigger, or they're a different variety of kangaroo. And all of a sudden you're seeing a 5 foot, and the color, a lot of you get people that, are out in the woods a lot, know deer. Like we have whitetail deer, and you guys have different types of deer and whitetail and mule deer and stuff like that. Depending on where they spend a majority of their time, their colors will be different, darker or lighter, or, they used to always say, like, the ones that stay up higher on the mountains usually have a grayer color to them. Not that they're gray, but they have a grayer hue to their fur.
Yep.
The ones that are down in fields are generally brighter because they match, in with the fields and stuff like that more. It's a natural camouflage. So is this woman seeing a kangaroo that just happens to be a lighter version than she's used to?
Yeah. Or it could simply be maybe she's not accustomed. Just because she's in Australia doesn't mean there's kangaroo in every street corner. Just like around here where you have people that live in a more populated area don't see deer as often as people that live in an area like where I live, where I literally have them in my backyard every morning. I
had a pet deer that lives in my yard for like a whole year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my point. You know what I mean? Like people like us who are accustomed to seeing them every day, we know, well, other than you who thinks it's a kangaroo, most normal people would say, hey, that's a deer. I know what that is, But to somebody like a friend of mine who had moved to the area from New York when we were kids, freaked out anytime he saw a deer, even chipmunks and squirrels. He would freak out anytime he saw any kind of wildlife, because when you're in the city, you're not accustomed to that. So, and even just say for me, if I drive a few hours north, I could see moose. There aren't moose where I live. So for me to go somewhere and it's not an animal that I see on a regular basis, I may be taken back if I don't recognize it right away,
Yeah.
because it's not something that's in my normal daily line of sight, routine. So it
Yeah.
could be one of those situations where she was traveling a few hours away from where she's normally from. And oh my gosh, what is that? I can't identify it, and it looks too big to be what I think it might be, like a kangaroo. And oh, it's a Yowie,
Yeah. Well, and then if you go to the guy who claimed that the object in the sky had what seemed like maneuverability and was moving in a distinct manner, that's a thing. Like, you'd have to give some testing to that person to see what they consider, something flying compared to something falling.
Right.
You know, bouncing off of certain things, the light and stuff like that, it could have looked like, oh yeah, it was, moving a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw, my wife and I were out walking and we saw basically what we would call a shooting star. But
Mm-hmm.
when it got so far into the atmosphere, it actually blew up.
Right.
Now, not like an actual explosion, but it splintered off into pieces. And then all of a sudden it was like three distinct pieces. It was one piece, and all of a sudden it went three different spots.
Right.
But it just broke up in the atmosphere, and that was still burning. The pieces burnt as they went off.
Mm-hmm.
So, to somebody who maybe isn't as familiar with those, incidences, it was maneuvering in such a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean...
Well, he did say, too, that it was a rectangular dark object. So the aerodynamics on something square is going to be a lot less streamlined than something that's more rounded or aerodynamic that would, push the air around it to keep a set course. Whereas an odd shaped object is going to flail and kind of, move erratically. You know, it's like when you don't throw a perfect spiral with a football, if you don't get it right, it's going to flop around like a dead duck or a dying duck, but if you get it right and it spirals, it cuts through the air perfectly, So, but I don't know. That's that story.
Next.
Anything else to add to it? Yeah. All right. Next. So this next one that we want to talk about is interesting. And it also comes from Mysterious Universe, because the last show, I think it was the last show that we had, we talked about the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia, in the Ural Mountains in Russia. So do you have that story up, or do you just want me to kind of go through it?
No, you can read it. I would have to read it off my iPhone.
All right, I'll just read verbatim here off of the website. And again, this is Mysterious Universe, so anybody could go out and find it, or just click the link off of our Facebook page and you could read it yourself. But I'll read it for you. It's audiobook time, I suppose. So it says, and this one was written by Paul Seaburn at Mysterious Universe: strange debris found at Dyatlov Pass, site of mysterious deaths. And as we talked about in our show relating to the Dyatlov Pass, or discussing it, it's one of history's great unsolved and conspiracy generating mysteries. Because like we said during our show, there were probably, or at least 16 different conspiracy theories that we had found relating to the incident, or trying to solve the incident. But in 1959, the frozen bodies of a 9-member ski hiking expedition were found partially undressed near their Ural Mountain campsite in an area whose indigenous name means dead mountain. The official reason given for the skiers' strange behavior, like slicing open their tent from the inside, was natural force they were unable to overcome. Again, one of the things that we talked about during that show was they were trying to write it off that they were trying to escape an avalanche, which, if you listen to that show, there were a lot of points that we had brought out that would disprove that theory. Whereas there were no signs of the avalanche. There were still footprints all over the place. If it were an avalanche and they were overtaken by it, their footprints and their bodies would have been covered from it. The fact that their tent was still standing in the original position, it would have been buried by an avalanche. So there was a lot of things that had disproved the avalanche theory. But anyways, it says the investigation documents were classified and the public was banned from the area for 3 years, which irritated those who heard witnesses had seen fireballs that could have been Russian missile tests, energy orbs, or alien spaceships. Now, nearly 60 years later, a possible piece of solid evidence may have been found, with its own discovery also shrouded in mystery and intrigue. So it says the latest piece in this mysterious Dyatlov Pass begins in 2008 when a tourist claims to have found a large chunk of metal near the site. The 3 foot by 3 foot, 1 square meter piece was either too heavy or perhaps too frightening for the person to bring back in 2008. So it remained there until this year when the URA.RU reported that an expedition had returned to the remote location using GPS coordinates kept by the finder and retrieved it. And one of the people there had quoted, it seems easy only the first 100 meters. In fact, it is hard to carry and very uncomfortable. We even at that time hardly managed to deliver it, although we specially prepared it. So Alexander Zarubin told the URA.RU, reported on the expedition for URA.RU. You could go to that site. There's numerous pictures of the chunk and the area and the team. And it says that after the difficult retrieval, it was delivered to Yuri Kontsevich, head of the Dyatlov Foundation dedicated to maintaining the Dyatlov Museum and continuing the investigation of the unsolved mystery. Kontsevich said his initial analysis, along with others who have looked at it, it is that the metal is part of a rocket fuel tank, possibly from an intercontinental ballistic UR-100. Did this metal fragment help solve the mysterious 1959 deaths of the skiers on Dyatlov Pass? Well, it fits the theory that the Russian military was conducting tests. Not a real surprise. And a secret missile crashed in the area, and its secret cargo may have been responsible for the radiation detected on the bodies and their clothing. And again, like we talked about in our report on this, the radiation levels were very, very low, and some of the people that were on the team worked at a nuclear plant. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's either from a bomb or it's from the people that work there because radiation lingers. It might also lend credence to the theory that the skiers were involved with the tests, possibly working with the KGB, a theory based on reports that some of their diaries and film rolls, one of which may have had photos of the strange orange fireballs, were missing. So it goes on to say, why did these experienced hikers tear through their tent from the inside to go barefoot in the snow, some dying from exposure, others from injuries, including a broken skull, 2 broken ribs, a missing tongue, and the chunks of the metal sheds no light on this or the rumors of a Yeti attack, which again we kind of just debunked that one. An avalanche or a rare weather condition known as Kármán vortex street that can generate very low frequency sound waves that could have caused psychological problems that drove the hikers mad, or at least to do odd non-hikerly things. No other pieces of metal were found. Could have been placed there deliberately to distract investigators who may be getting too close to the real reason behind the Dyatlov mystery, or it is just a coincidental piece of the many rockets and missiles launched there by the USSR and Russia.
See, they're afraid of the Charlesworth theory. That's why they're hiding. They're putting evidence in place to disprove it.
That's absolutely right.
Now, well, here's the thing. You got to think. It looks like a piece of metal from a fuel tank for a rocket. Mm-hmm. There's no way of dating it, without some kind of serial number or production number. There's no way to date it back to the 50s. You know what I mean? Because
There wasn't any other real descriptive details about the piece either, other than it was a 3 foot by 3 foot chunk of metal. Was
And
it rusted?
somebody,
Did it show age?
yeah, and somebody saying, "Oh, well, it looks like a UR-100 fuel tank." Well, a piece of it, well, how many of those have you seen?
Mm-hmm.
If this person was an expert in the UR-100 and its design and its metal consistencies and stuff like that, then him saying, "Oh yeah, that's what it is," kind of would have more credence to the cause of, "Oh, it was a missile." But also, they could have been testing missiles in that area, for 20 years after that, and that just could have been a piece that happened to work its way down the mountain over the years into that area.
True. Well, yeah, because with all the snow and avalanches and other, winter natural phenomenon, it could have easily, or early spring to late spring runoff, everything could be washing down. So you're right. It could have been misplaced, from somewhere up higher, because it is a known missile test area. So why that would be considered strange is kind of odd, that.
Well, I think it's only considered strange because of the whole Dyatlov Pass story. I think anything that happens there or anything that's found there is going to be strange because it's always going to somehow be tied back to
that incident.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even you and I have talked about like coincidental things.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have always, kind of had those conversations like your camera that went missing.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, we use a camera on an investigation out at the Daniel Stewart farm.
Mm-hmm.
I have known Les since we were 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This man has the boxes and the little like twist ties that come for wires for everything he owns. If not stuff he's gotten rid of over the years, he still has this stuff. He is so detailed and meticulous when it comes to, like he will be, even if it's not his equipment, like we do an investigation at the Haldeman and we're getting ready to pack up in the morning and he's like, "Okay, we've already walked through the building once. We're going to go through the building a second time. And we will find stuff that we don't remember, getting out, but we may have over the night, or one of the other team members who were working with us may have grabbed it at some point and we just weren't paying attention that they had it." But he'll find stuff and then he'll be like, "Okay, so this is why we do this."
Mm-hmm.
I know Les puts things back in his travel tub of a paranormal and cryptozoology related research equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Couple weeks after we do the Daniel Stewart, Les says to me, "Hey, can you check your equipment for me and see if my camera's in there?" Now, I have a lot less equipment that I carry, so I get out my stuff, check all my bags, check my carry cases. "No, man, I don't got it." He goes to me, "Well, can you get in contact with the owner of the property to see if maybe I left it in the room or something like that, or maybe left it in the barn?" Yep. Give her, shoot her a message, see if she's, come up with a camera. She gets back to me. She's like, "No, I haven't seen it. If it pops up, though, I'll hold it for you," because we have a pretty good relationship with her. We stop out and see her when we're in town and stuff like that if we have time.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was it? A couple months go by, a year almost?
No, it was almost 2 years.
Yeah. And do you want to finish the story?
Yeah, well, during that time, now, like Chad said, I guess I have a bit of OCD when it comes to things that I own. I try and take care of my things is really what I do, and I have a foot locker that I keep all of my investigation equipment in, and this camera in particular, I never use for anything other than research. I have all different kinds of camera equipment that I use for my business that I don't use for personal or hobby use. So again, this camera lives in that particular tote. So I know for a fact that when we were down there, I remember categorizing all my stuff and putting it back into the specific spots in the box that it goes, because it's like a puzzle. I have to put it back together right. So I remember, and I take the batteries out of everything so nothing gets damaged or nothing, like an acid leak or corrosion. I don't want anything, because you spend a lot of money on that stuff. I don't want it ruined. So I remember folding up the charging cable, putting it in the front of the thing. I remember putting it back. I remember putting everything back. I came home, put the trunk back where I normally keep it, and then over time, we moved. Nothing came out of that tote. So it's weird that long story short, we moved. I couldn't find the damn thing. And then for whatever reason, I was in one of our rooms probably a year and a half after we had already moved in. And so this camera showed up in a miscellaneous bag that I think had all the stuff from one of our junk drawers at the old house. And there was my camera in the little bag. And I don't know where the charging cable is. It wasn't there, but I found the camera. But how it got out of the case, like nobody touches that case. Nobody touches the case. It's my case. My family knows not to touch it. How it got out, I have no idea.
Yeah, but that's a kind of getting back to what the point of that whole story was. That's coincidental stuff that happens around an investigation or the reason we're investigating is this alleged paranormal activity.
Right.
So all of a sudden now you have a coincidental happening that goes along with that. Just like this piece of metal being found in the area where the hikers, met their deaths.
Yep.
Does it mean they're connected? Not necessarily. It doesn't say that it's not connected, but it's not evidence that is supporting any kind of connection.
Right. They're connected in the fact that they're just both weird incidences.
In that area, yeah.
Right.
Just like the camera. Les knows where he used it last. Les knows how meticulous he is about stuff. Yeah. And I'm not complaining because Les has actually found equipment of mine that I've accidentally left behind as we were going to leave. So I appreciate his thought process there.
Tendencies.
So it's definitely one of those things where it's random. And I don't know, there are whole schools of thought out there that you don't discount these random coincidences, that these coincidences are evidence towards some bigger, be it paranormal or cryptozoology or ufology things. It's bigger evidence to prove this. There's also, it's like, I guess they consider synchronicities and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've listened actually to Mysterious Universe do a whole show about one of the books that was about synchronicities and stuff like that. And I listened to it, and I think the guy who wrote it was a mathematician, and he was showing mathematically how these synchronicities and coincidences are actually not coincidences. They are happenings that are involving an actor or agent from your previous investigation. But again, as somebody who's done actual investigation and stuff like that, not that paranormal or cryptozoology, not that but I've actually worked where my statements have been read in court cases. I've testified in court. You can't take those coincidences and look at a judge and a defense attorney when you're a witness for the prosecution and go, well, yeah, but I really think these two things are related. They're going to just say, no, inadmissible and do not repeat it.
Yeah.
And look at the jury and say, please strike that last statement you heard from the record. You will not be allowed to use that going forward.
Yeah.
But it's weird stuff that happens in conjunction. I mean, different times, we've had, different stuff happen, where it's been, I'll go into a story. We were about a weekend before we left to go to the Homestead Orphanage in Gettysburg the 1 year. I'm sitting in church, and I feel what feels like a little kid, trying to get this on frame here, tugging on my hand. And it went on through the entire church service. And it would stop for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it would feel like somebody was tugging on my hand. So I'm like, okay, that's just a really odd sensation. I've never experienced it after that, where there wasn't really a little kid grabbing my hand. And before that, I'd never experienced it unless it was a little kid like tugging on my hand.
Yeah.
It happens a week before we go to the orphanage. It's a coincidence. It's a random, just random, muscular skeleton response to some kind of electric stimulus from my brain. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of, we were going to do an investigation, and I felt like there was little kids tugging on my hand and trying to get my attention, and we're going to a place where little kids were abused and tormented, well, there's my connection. I'm having these experiences outside of an investigation.
Right.
It's often like people also say, like, not to deviate a little bit, but paranormal investigation hangover or lockdown hangover, where, I was so drained the next couple of days and I just didn't feel right, and this, that, and the other thing. Yes, that's 100% correct, but it also has a normal human factor to it.
Mm-hmm.
Can be attributed to a couple of things. A, you were up all night, which not unless you work third shift, you're probably really not used to.
Right.
Your emotions were on the extreme edges: excitement, fear, possibilities of, I could see a ghost tonight, so you get all hyped up, and then boredom because you're sitting watching a monitor or you're sitting holding an EVP recorder and nothing's going on.
Right.
So your body is going through these, different chemical and physical responses to things. And then the next day you're tired. Well, of course you're tired. You were up all night. Your body does feel off because your body probably got maybe 4 hours of sleep because, I don't want to sleep too long because that'll ruin the rest of my weekend, or I got to be back at work on Monday, so I can't stay up all day. I can't go to sleep all day Sunday after investigating Saturday.
Right.
It's a coincidence. It's not a direct effect from investigating. This piece of metal is a random coincidence it's a test range for missiles. Things fall all the time from shoddy equipment. Planes break up. There's been plane crashes in that area. Are you still there, Les?
Yep. I'm here. I'm listening to you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, if you guys can hear me, I'm just going to keep rambling.
You can't hear me?
So, these things aren't necessarily...
Can you hear me?
Direct related. And you can personally feel like there's some kind of connection to it. And if you're a good investigator, you're going to follow up to prove or disprove that connection. It's not always, it's not always not something, but to use it and to hold it as evidence, it's not a good place to start from. So I believe the next thing we wanted to speak about, I don't know if Les can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Anybody?
No, Les, we cannot hear you or see you. You kind of have frozen on my screen. Yeah, on the output screen.
He says he can hear both of us fine. I hear you.
Oh, I hear you both fine. I hear you both. Well, I don't hear you, Les, so I don't know.
Hold on, everybody. Let me see if I can have.
Well, it definitely is not an Explorer show without technical difficulties. I got to say that much.
Oh yes, Chad is right. If we could have a damn show without any
Okay,
kind
I will
of
log back out and log back in.
All right, Chad just logged out. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. Maddie says he could hear both of us fine. Well, we're going to have Chad come back in. Hopefully this works.
Can you hear me?
Welcome back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I heard you the whole time. I saw you the whole time.
It was weird because I'm not on. Or hold on. I'm watching the Facebook feed on my phone, and the
Maybe
weird
that's
thing
what it's
was,
doing.
no, well, you were still moving and stuff on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
but on my screen, my display that I see you on, you froze, and I couldn't hear you at all.
That's funny that you said that, because on my end too, you were getting really pixelated for a while. Like your voice was really chopping up, and your video was chopping up, and then it just, as soon as it stopped, when it was really bad, as soon as it stopped, you were perfectly fine, and I was responding to you, and then you're like, "Are you there? Are you there?" I was like, "Oh, well, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm here," and everybody could hear both of us, so we probably sounded really dumb. But
Well, like I said, I don't know if you heard it or not, but I said, it's not an Explorer show without technical difficulties.
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, coincidence that you're talking bad about the piece of metal. Yeah, it's coming back to haunt us, Moon Joey. Look, it's taunting us with our show.
See, it's the Russian hackers who are trying to get my theory discredited so they don't
That's
get
right.
exposed.
That's right. And it's funny that you said that too, because a lot of times when we were doing the Dyatlov Pass and whatnot, and we mentioned anything with Russia, with all the bullshit going on with the what do you want to call it, the election or whatever, I'm like, God, we keep referencing Russia. I wonder if we're getting hacked into.
Well, believe it or not, my wife, we just had to have her bank card turned off and get a new bank card sent to us because somewhere along the way she ended up getting skimmed or something like that. And they tried to, they did a first withdrawal on it, a charge, and she luckily caught it. And then all of a sudden, as the processing of shutting it down and freezing it was going on, they tried to put a second one through for a larger amount.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So again, coincidence. It has nothing to do with our, theories or anything like that. But, but that's the kind of stuff, like, it's just random. It happens to everybody every day. There's not everybody, but there's a large majority that have these kind of things happen to them.
Right. So we were there's a third topic, and do you want to talk about that, or you just want to get right into the St. Albans? Because it's not really cryptozoological or paranormal. It's more or less about, well, you could just give the synopsis quick.
Yeah. If you guys had seen the post I put up about the New York Times did a story on, they found water on Jupiter, and scientists are saying this doesn't prove that there is life on Jupiter, but doesn't disprove there is life on Jupiter. Basically, like I said, if anybody read the comments in there, I said basically this is a 2-line story. Water found in megastorm on Jupiter. The one we've known has been going on since the 1800s.
Right.
It's a fluff piece of news. But it does, this is one of the interesting things. It does show the power that paranormal cryptozoology, ufology is gaining in mainstream acceptance. There's look, I mean, they wrote a story that basically was probably about 4 paragraphs that basically said they've discovered water.
Mm-hmm.
In the New York Times 5 years ago, that might have been a little thing in the science section that said, water found on Jupiter, but water found on Jupiter in this, the megastorm that has been going on since since we've been able to observe since 1822. And they would have went on to say, well, this is one of the key things that NASA looks for on planets for the possible existence of the ability to sustain life.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have brought up the fact of this doesn't prove that there is alien life on Jupiter, and it doesn't disprove there's alien life on Jupiter. Down here there's a car company, a dealership, and basically their new commercial series, their whole new marketing program, is a guy who is like a bumbling Josh Gates,
Mm-hmm.
who's doing an adventure, a cryptozoology, paranormal, ufology adventure show, and it's a commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going out looking for Bigfoot, and he's driving, I think they refer to it as the Yeti.
Mm-hmm.
And he's driving around, and everywhere he looks, he's in a neighborhood. Everywhere he looks, there are Yeti. Everybody he sees looks like a Yeti. He wrecks the truck. One of the other commercials is, oh, we're taking a break from filming. And it's like he's shooting a commercial for his fake TV show. And in the background, the pickup truck that they're driving is getting, you can see a UFO above it with the light coming down, and the truck starts lifting off the ground. So paranormal, cryptozoology, ufology is now, Jack Links, the Sasquatch sticks,
Mm-hmm.
the Bigfoot pizzas.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to show in my mind, it's starting to show the acceptability and the power that, since we all enjoy stuff like this, it's starting to show that our voices are being heard in different areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, a lot of it is ridicule and satire, but it's being recognized, I guess.
But what's the most sincerest form of flattery? I don't remember. Humor. That's what I was asking.
I don't know.
But
well, I mean, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but
say it. Do it.
I think a lot of it has to do with Finding Bigfoot, the show. Though very entertaining, it's a joke. And all the people that are trying to be considered serious researchers are getting slapped across the forehead with that label of just a ridiculous kook, and I'm not discrediting the cast of Finding Bigfoot, because I know like Cliff, and I don't know them personally. I'm just saying I know that they are kind of they take it very seriously. Moneymaker, I don't know. Renee, I don't really know what her true intentions are, but I would assume if she truly is a biologist that she would have serious intent. But at the same time, it's entertainment, so there's got to be entertaining factors. But again, I don't think they had to make it as ridiculous as it was, because like if you look at Monster Quest on the History Channel, same kind of premise. They went out looking for monsters. They went out looking for the unknown. But the way they had filmed it and the way they had produced it and edited it and all that stuff, it seemed more educational, more logical, more scientific method, rather than, a group of people running around hooting and hollering in the woods. And every time an owl farted, that was a Bigfoot. Like one of the memes I saw online, and again, I'm not knocking Bobo, because I'm sure he has the best of intentions, and I hear he is a very, very nice guy. But it was a meme of him, and it's like pile of leaves in the woods, obvious Sasquatch activity, and that's what they made the show to be. You know what I mean? It's like they made it out to be a joke. So, and I think because of that, that's why this acceptance is, because people were eating it up like candy, because it was comical in a way. It was mildly educational and more comical, and a lot of the commercials and everything I think are being geared towards that as a joke more than it's something we should take seriously.
Yeah, but it's still
there. You're right. It's still there.
It's the old, bad publicity is still publicity. It's still furthering, the cause, and there's always going to be humor in in anything you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the show, when I never actually watched the show, honestly. I tweeted one time with the Renee, we were talking about In Search Of, the original, show and stuff like that. And I didn't even know who she was. I just knew that she was a Bigfoot researcher. And I had commented on it, and she commented back and stuff like that. But, that's where, from her, that was where her interest in this stuff came from.
Right.
Watching the old In Search Of, which was shot as a scientific exploration of these subjects. Finding Bigfoot, like I said, I maybe have seen about 20 minutes of the entire thing. I've never been into it.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched maybe 2 episodes of Ghost Hunters. I've never been into it. But general acceptance is it brings attention. When, comical like Zach Bagans, except for Zach Bagans has one of the top 100 cable television shows in ratings. No other paranormal show has ever done that.
No. But still, again, though, a lot of these are entertainment. You know what I mean? We've said it a million times. How can you really believe that what they're finding is legit?
But does it give you don't take their findings as legit, because first of all, you don't have a chance to work the same way they did, to repeat it. That's the problem with all this stuff with the scientific method, especially in paranormal, is you got to be able to recreate the experiment. Well, that's one of the hard, is the sticking point with science is, well, you can't recreate that ghost EVP sound, whatever.
Right,
the image on the photo. You can't ever do that.
Right.
So it is always entertainment, but it tells you stories. How many locations, how many eyewitnesses, how many different, eyewitnesses in a given area on those shows have provided people with places to go,
mm-hmm.
Venues to attend, places, with paranormal, places to investigate. Yes, it is paratourism, but it's increased awareness inside the genre.
Yeah.
It is entertainment, but there are places you see on these TV shows that a lot of us, those of us that live on the East Coast, we don't hear a lot of the local legend of towns on the West Coast or in the Midwest or in the Southwest.
Right.
Same for people on the West Coast. They may have heard of Gettysburg, but they may not know of Fort Mifflin.
Mm-hmm.
They may not know about the Carlisle Barracks, which is actually part of, the Gettysburg campaign. So it is bringing awareness and stuff like that. And it is from the height of all the TV shows, but the fact that marketing is using these creatures and, stories as plot devices for marketing, that does definitely show an increase in acceptance or the use of they're marketing to you and I. They're not necessarily, they're people who look at it as a joke are going, oh yeah, that was a dumb commercial. I'll remember it now though, because the Yeti.
Yeah.
But people who are, looking at stuff and going, oh, well, that company uses a Yeti. I'd love to go ask the guy who's the head of marketing for that company. I probably could actually set up a meeting with him. It's not that far away. And say to him, like, hey, what's your feeling on Yetis? Oh, well, dude, it's a joke. Or, yeah, man, when I was a kid, when my grandfather took me out in the woods and we saw something, and I've just always kind of been interested, but, I just kind of thought it was a neat thing to do for a commercial, was this, like, travel channel type show with all the strange phenomenon in the background.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. I mean, but it is showing that it's becoming more, go back 10 years, name a commercial that had Bigfoot in it.
Right. Well, yeah, I see your point. It's the awareness is for sure there, now, but again, like I'm saying though, I mean, it's still in ridicule, but nonetheless, it's there.
But let's be honest. everybody who's watching, everybody who listens to this, could probably right now think about 4 or 5 researchers that they see on Facebook that fit the bill to be ridiculed. I right now have 3 of them in my head, and I'm not even thinking that hard. I'm not going to say who they are, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, well, they don't really matter in my world, but so it just has, that whole thing of like, they're basing their depictions off of the 3 that I can think of are basing their methodology off of the ones who are entertainment based and are trying to make a name for themselves. And the ones that are entertainment based are trying to keep their television show going for another season.
Yeah.
To make money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would love to see something like along the lines of the Monster Quest, something a little bit that to what I fathomed or what I gathered was on the more serious side. You know what I mean? Obviously, they never caught anything, obviously, but at least it still tried to give, like I said before, it at least tried to give a little bit more of a scientific value to it. It tried to give it more of a documentary than a goofy, comical, pseudo.
Well, here's the problem, and I agree with you. I would much rather see those type of things be produced.
Mm-hmm.
We who enjoy this stuff want to see real scientific, real history, real eyewitness stories. We want to see that.
Right.
The average viewer wants bigger, faster, scarier.
Right.
So the stuff that we're all interested in gets dumbed down to the comic value and the creep factor and the putting the low decibel soundtrack behind it to make it even scarier. Mm-hmm. The binaural beats and all to it. Because they need to do that to keep the television show going. They keep the television show going, the ad revenue keeps going, the ratings go up, the more ad dollars come in because it's worth more on the time.
Right.
So the stuff that we all want to see, we'll probably never really see without somebody doing these online type things and sharing their investigations and sharing their work in a serious manner online, not trying to be the next Jason Hawes or Zach Bagans or Nick Groff.
Yeah.
Without trying to be them, you're probably never going to see a TV show that really depicts what's going on. Like we always say, we go to a paranormal investigation, we could sit there for 12 hours and not a single thing occurs. Nobody's going to watch that on TV. Even if you edit it down to a 45-minute show, nobody's going to watch that. They're going to watch one episode and go, well, that was really not that interesting.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And Moon Joey has a good point. Like he says he's posted numerous scientific articles concerning methodology in the paranormal research, and those posts get little to no acceptance. But you post some ambiguous photo of a ghost, or case in point, he says, people go nuts over it, and it's true. Case in point, like we'll post stuff like some of these articles. They get a little bit of traffic. Some of them are a little bit more in depth than others. I mean, some of them, like, the ones that we kind of read were short reads, not much to them, but there were other ones like some of the Big Cat posts that we had that had some meat to it, that had some, truth or something behind it, that could be fathomable.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, you hardly get a click on it.
Yeah.
I post a thing about the extra testicles or whatever, or terresticles. It gets like 600 and some freaking shares or posts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or likes or reaches or whatever you want to call it. But that's the point, is I guess people want the dumbed down kind of mindless humor, which, don't get me wrong, I'm entertained by a lot of it. I can sit back and I'll laugh at it. Do I take it seriously? No. Did I take Finding Bigfoot seriously? No. And again, so the members individually, I'm sure they do a phenomenal job. I mean, they're all over these conventions and whatnot that go on all over the United States, you know, so people obviously care to hear their more truthful speeches and ideals, but the show was comical. It was for entertainment value, you know, and people eat that up like mountain monsters. You know what I mean?
Just horrible. But well, think about it. Like, you know, on Facebook, somebody post, you know, a random photo of their grandkid, and they put the heading, "Tell me what you see in this photo." Try to be a logical person and comment on those photos. I see your grandchild standing in the doorway to your kitchen. It appears to be daytime.
Yeah.
Not one person will reply on that. Mm-hmm. I see 3 people standing behind him, and one of them's an old man, and the thing will get 17,000 likes.
Yeah.
You can't be logical. Like, I stop myself from commenting an awful lot.
Because you will get torn apart.
Yeah.
You try to use logic and
you know, like using science or using the fact of like, these are things I've learned that cameras will do.
Yeah.
Like this orb is, I mean, the National Paranormal Society's page has a chart of orbs and what causes them. It came from the camera manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
So people will, you know, post this orb and it's brilliant colors. And you go to that chart and you look and it's water vapor and, you know, at this, you know, this time of year, and you post that and you post the chart with it. And,
you're
that has to be,
you're this or that.
Why, you're just trying to debunk this because you didn't find it.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to.
Joey has another post there. Exact same thing where he debunked a photo from the Stanley Hotel saying about the reflections from the lenses and whatnot, and he got attacked for it. There were a few times, and I've been in photography for my career for 20 years. You know, I know a thing or two. I'm not the world's greatest, mind you, I'll admit that, but I know how to work a camera, and I know what cameras produce in different scenarios and different situations, different kind of lighting, you know, different functions within the camera produce different results. And Jesus mighty, you go on there and you see an obvious thing, a lens flare, reflections of dust, or and you try and point that out, and like you said, and Joey, people don't want to hear logic. They want to hear people eat up the same stuff that they think that they're seeing. I don't know if it's in hopes that they're not proven to be insane, but I mean, I know in some situations, you know, you got to think of it like some of the pictures, like with the red circles, you know, I see, like Andy was talking about when he was on the show with us. He's like, somebody sent him a picture there, or posted a picture with red circles, and it's like, I see 2 dogmen and a juvenile Bigfoot. Well, we weren't there. We didn't see they saw, but a lot of it is that pareidolia or whatever, however you want to pronounce it. Your mind is trying to make sense of images, shapes. It's trying to make a face out of something, so you think you see something. Now, again, like I said, I wasn't there. I wasn't in front of it. There very well may have been something there. I didn't see it. But then when you try and push it, like he said, then the person's like, oh, well, you can't see them, because they're like, you know, I'm not discrediting you, like, because, you know, he's British. He's trying to be polite, as he puts it. You know, although, you claim to see something, I don't see something there, so I can't say that this is evidence, And then the person replies back, oh, well, you're not going to see them. They're cloaking. What the hell is that? You know what I mean? Like, how could you say? Then you can't post it.
Yeah. Well, I had in one of the Facebook, and this is a couple of years back, it's a Gettysburg Ghost and Paranormal or something like that. It was a Facebook page. I don't even know if it still exists. I may have actually been booted off of it. It was a photo from Devil's Den.
Uh-huh.
And it's this photo of what I can guarantee you is a reenactor.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I am pretty sure I know who it is from looking at the picture.
Uh-huh.
Haven't seen him in a few years, but I'm pretty sure I know who it is.
Yeah.
So this person posts the photo. Look what I caught at Devil's Den. And I'm like, oh, that's a great photo of that reenactor.
Yeah.
It's a ghost. It's not a reenactor. There was nobody else up there. I'm like, first of all, I've been to Devil's Den thousands of times. I have walked up on people in the middle of the day that didn't know I was there. Right. It is a big cluster of rocks and brush and trees, and you can hide inside those rocks and be right underneath people and them not know you're there. Well, it couldn't be. So I took the photo and I started showing them what was inaccurate with the uniform. I said, it's a reenactor because this, and this are not, first of all, are not the proper regimental uniforms for the Confederate regiments that were there. Well, you can't prove that. Yeah, I can. Go look at the battle orders. You can clearly see that the regiments that were there were never supplied with the following items. Right. You can trace it all the way back through their, from the time they were commissioned as a regiment to the end of the war and see that they were never given those items. In fact, those items don't exist at that period of time. No, it's a ghost. It's a ghost. Okay, if you believe it is, because I've just scientifically and logically debunked everything in that photo.
Yeah, that's not even really scientifically. That's just common sense and common knowledge that you could go anywhere. You could go to any one of the museums that have this information that's public knowledge.
Yeah. But, so I agree with Moon Joey there. The field needs serious facts and truth. And the problem is, I would say we're in the minority in that sense. We want to provide the best evidence we can. We want to work the evidence to the point of saying to other investigators, hey, listen to this. Tell me what you think. And not from your group, our group, but go outside of the group and say, hey, Moon Joey, I know you investigate. I'm going to send you an audio file. Just take a listen. Let me know what you think.
Yeah.
That's the stuff we need to be doing. We can't sit on it and then put it out there and say, Class A EVP and light phenomenon or orb or whatever certain people want to call it.
Yeah.
And as soon as somebody questions it, it's not a I'm right, you're wrong scenario. It's, hey, could that be a bug?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's a bug because bugs generally show up this way on that, in the light and, but it could be. So that's a possibility, but it's the dead of winter. We don't have that type of bug here during the dead of winter. Interesting. But people don't want the truth. They want just blindly believe the, certain people. Something. Yeah, or they want to blindly believe certain people in these fields, are providing them with all the truths out there.
Yeah.
again, I just thought of three people in my head that people just blindly believe and don't. And if you question them, you're some kind of government agent trying to discredit them, so they don't get the truth out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I've rambled enough about that.
Yeah, exactly. We both have. But one last thing that I want to point out to that, and even though we are talking about all that stuff and we are giving our opinions and our thoughts on that, everybody is entitled to believe what they want to believe. That's fine. If somebody wants to say A, B, and C, okay, fine. A, B, and C. Well, here's my A, B, and C to that. You believe I'm not gonna put them down. I'm not gonna make them feel, like a piece of what. But at the same time, okay, well, that's your opinion. That's what you're telling me. Well, this is my opinion. I'm sharing it with you. And I always try and if you're gonna conflict, at least try and do it maturely and professionally, and try and come to some sort of a logical understanding or agreement. You know what I mean? Agree to disagree, fine, but just we don't have to tear everybody apart. Because, and I guess in another sense too, one of the reasons why our evidence page isn't overloaded with orbs and red circles and this, that, and the other thing is because Chad and I don't subscribe to every single anomaly that we find in any given photo is paranormal or cryptozoological. It's a creature. It's this, it's that. No, we have tons of that crap in our archives. The stuff that we put is the stuff that we just can't figure out. 99.9% of all the other stuff we could accredit it to, a fractal in the camera, digital noise, in a video or in an image, anything that we know for sure. Well, I work with these things on a daily basis. I know it produces this. I'm not going to put it out there and say this is evidence for the world to see, because I don't need everybody to jump on my picture and fluff my ego because they think it's what I think it is and it's a ghost because I say it is. I don't need that. I want to put out something that I can't explain. And if somebody comes back to there's numerous things that I had put out or sent to people personally, audio clips that I had found. I can't explain it. I think it is, well, one in particular is what I call possible Bigfoot call that I had recorded on a property I lived on. I don't know what it is. I think it is a coyote, but it doesn't sound like the coyotes that I'm used to hearing down there. So I sent it out to a bunch of different people. I got mixed reviews. Some people say, oh, the coyote or this or that. Known species. And I can accept that. In fact, I'm glad because I went and I looked some things up. And not in this case particular, I still can't figure out what this noise is. But in other cases, it sounds like boar, it sounds like this, sounds like that. Okay, I get it, But then other people are like, wow, you caught this is a definite Bigfoot. I've heard one of these. Okay, great. Well, can you give me something? I've recorded a sound just like that. Great. Can you send it to me? I think once I got somebody that sent me something that was very similar to what I had. Neither one of us could depict or determine what the actual sound is, but everybody else is like, yeah, I got to sound like that. Great. Well, can you send it to me? No, I don't know. What am I getting at here? If you're going to say it's a Bigfoot, give me something to help me want to believe that what you and I are hearing is a Bigfoot. Don't just say, yeah, I heard that it's a Bigfoot. Okay. Well, on what grounds? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing that always got me with the sound that you recorded was that time that I got the audio of the Australian Yowie sound, alleged Yowie sound, that has a lot of similarities to the sound that you had recorded. Right. Now, they're not identical, like 100% matches, but they have some similarities that stuck out as peculiar, especially in that area. because they don't have coyotes in that area.
Right. Exactly. Well, they have dingoes down under, but I don't know if they howl. But you know what I mean. You're right. You know, if there's known species that make a similar sound, and if one is present in one area but not present in another area, well, all right. Well, maybe I have something here. You know, let's look a little bit further. Let's look at what other known species are in those area. What other kind of fauna is in that area that we could kind of look up a sound and try and match it to. But
with a lot of our evidence that we do post, if you ever watch a lot of it, there are, a lot of times I'm the one that does the video content, like that backs it so we can put it up. I always put in there, please, send us what you think it is. Or, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is how the question I asked. This was the mistake I made while asking that question. This answer what I'm hearing would fit that question. But be your own judge. Comment. Let me know what you're hearing.
Right.
I get hey, that's great. Oh, that's really cool. That's a great EVP. One person may be like, I'm not really sure that's what I'm hearing. But nobody ever wants to be that person that can kind of be like, yeah, could it be this? Could it have been something doing this? Could it be something doing that? Like, a lot of people just want to blindly, well, I guess if you search for, EVPs on YouTube, most likely your blind belief is there. Like, oh, every one of these I hear has to be real. Unless it's so obviously bad that it couldn't be real. But besides that, do we want to talk about, what do we want to talk about next? Because I think we're just kind of
we really beat a dead horse on that last one. Jeez. But I guess it's all topics that kind of drive us all crazy. You know what I mean? This is a mishmash show, so I guess it all kind of fits. So without going too long tonight, I do want to recap what you had experienced, thought of St. Albans. Let's just do a recap of your time there, and I want to talk about what you think we could do if we brought the entire team down for a full-on investigation at St. Albans.
Well, let me start with, the place is enormous. Basically, one of the friends of the show and we met up there and stuff like that, because he's interested in investigating, but he's, doesn't have a team or anything like that. And it just happened to be something I wanted to do, and Les, just couldn't make it down that weekend. So I ended up going with, this friend of the show. And we basically had this ongoing joke is, no matter which way you go, you just have to be able to find the lobby so you can start over again and work your way back out. And that's basically how we navigated the building. Was we can get to the lobby from this floor going this way. Okay, so if we go down this hallway, at worst, we got to come back this way, because during the day, like when you first get there, it was daylight. It's summertime. It's daylight until 9 o'clock at night. You're walking around, and a lot of the photos I took were during the day. You're walking around, it's naturally lit from, there's not really lights that are on in the building, but it's naturally lit from all the windows. So you walk down a hallway, you don't think twice about it. It's a T junction at the end of this hallway, and we went left, and then we went right, and we went this way. You don't think about that. All of a sudden at night, when it's dark outside, and now it was a full moon that night, so at least there was some illumination.
Right.
But there was quite a few times we walked down a hall and would just stop and be like, were we here? Were we in this section before? No, I don't really recognize this. Well, which floor are we on? So it's definitely a maze when it gets dark. It is a maze.
Right.
And it's so big. Like it's not Penhurst big, where you have several different buildings and tunnels and all that stuff. But the building itself is like basically almost like three different parts to the building. And depending on which way you go, you can get lost real quick. Like there was a whole section of the building that we didn't even get to until the very end.
Mm-hmm. How's the overall appearance of the place? Like, is it like really run down, or do you think like is there safety concerns, or is it still in decent enough shape that we should be able to investigate without any kind of major issues?
There are nothing that you're not going to fall through the floor, or the ceiling's not going to cave in on your head.
Right.
There's some holes. There's some doors that you have to be careful with that are super like 3-inch solid steel doors that you just got to watch that you don't bump them the wrong way, because they will come flying at you. But definitely, like, when we were there, during the daylight hours, they kind of take you on a tour and let you kind of go around certain areas for a little bit and kind of get the lay of the land, and pick areas that maybe you want to investigate later and stuff like that. And so we did all that, and it was really nice. And then we went, got something to eat, came back, and then they release you in the building by yourself with your little group of friends or whatever you're with.
Mm-hmm.
One of the areas that we were really interested in was the bowling alley area.
Mm-hmm.
When we had done the initial walkthrough with the guide and all that stuff and with other people, there's a bathroom off the bowling alley. And it's like 2 stalls and 2 sinks, and then possibly what could have been like a shower area at one point, but there's no like shower heads or anything there anymore. Well, we walked in and we kind of like looked around the room, and then we went over, and there were, of course, there's always random chairs at these places that are pay to play investigation things. So we go over and sit in these random chairs, and I break out the K2 and I lay it on the chair in front of me and get out the camera, and I just kind of, shoot a little bit around the room and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, this other group walks in to the room. Now, you got to understand, this room's probably 24 foot long by about 9 to 10 foot wide. So it's a pretty decent sized room. So we're in there, and they're standing over by where the sinks are. And all of a sudden, they had a millimeter. All of a sudden, their millimeter is spiking all the way up. And sitting there with the K2 meter on the chair, all of a sudden, their millimeter drops back down to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The K2 meter spikes all the way up and is holding at like 4 to 5 lights on it. And it's just holding there. Then all of a sudden, it drops back down to nothing. The millimeter across the room kicks all the way back up and is binging off the wall. It's just going nuts. They start talking, they're doing like EVP or something like that, and they're talking, and all of a sudden it stops ringing again. And the K2 meter is pegging again. It happened a good 5 or 6 times where it was just back and forth between the two of us. Like their millimeter would go off, it would stop going off, all of a sudden the K2 would go off. Then all of a sudden that would stop and the millimeter would go off.
And how far away from each other were you?
I was up against the back wall, so they had to be at least 10 foot, if not more, away from me. 10 to 12 foot. I mean, the room's about 24 foot long.
And any cell phones out visible?
Nope.
And I know we discussed this before about how cell phones severely affect the way those devices work. And we tested that. But now, granted, you have to be pretty darn close to the cell phone in order for them to be, doing any kind of disruption. But I'm wondering with everybody, because there was a test that was done the one time where people put popcorn kernels in the middle of a circle of cell phones, and they called the phones.
And the pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have enough people in the room and their phones are running, even if they're not physically in their hand, but, the apps are always running behind the scenes and whatnot. I'm wondering.
Hold on. Keep going. I want to show you something now.
Okay. I'm just wondering, is there some sort of a combined energy field being generated from the cell phones that would trigger these devices? And I guess I'll have to wait for him to come back on that response because he took off. Oh, here he comes. And your phone is running.
Phone is running Facebook.
All right, well,
when you receive data or incoming calls and stuff like that, like, let me see if I can update if I got any new mail.
Yeah, they're spiking a little bit.
Okay. So, but the phone's sitting, now there it's going crazy.
Yeah.
I can't get it on the screen though, because it's updating. Okay. So yes, that's a possibility. I just wanted to show that is a possibility, but the fact that the phones weren't being that close.
Yeah.
The floors above you are solid wood and steel and stuff like that. So this is where.
And you said, what room was this again?
This is it's a bathroom off the bowling alley.
Oh. And it wasn't the suicide bathroom?
No.
No. Okay.
No. The bowling alley is where they allegedly have captured EVPs of a female spirit and a child. So, we go through the rest of the building. We come up with a couple of areas like, when we come back from getting something to eat, we kind of were sitting there like, we were looking at each other and we're like, well, where do you want to go? Down to the bowling alley? Like, okay, that's where I wanted to go too. I just didn't want to be the one that because I was there with somebody who, is a friend of the show, and I didn't want to be like, okay, we're going to do everything Chad wants to do this evening.
Yeah.
So, we both paid to be there. So it was like, I'm just willing to tag along wherever stuff that you found interesting, stuff I find interesting. Let's just go do it. We have until 4 a.m. So we go back down to the bowling alley. So, of course, the bowling alley, you got people down there with dowsing rods and stuff like that. A lot of people were using dowsing rods. I didn't really get why that was such a big thing there, but it seemed to be even the tour guides that were there earlier were using them.
Now, were they walking around with them trying to get a response, or were they just sitting asking questions and trying to get them to do a response?
Some of the groups were sitting doing it. Some of them were standing. A couple of people were walking around with them. So I'm just not a big fan of dowsing rods. Like, honestly, I just don't. It's vibration. Your body vibrates. It's going to move the object you have in your hand. Like mine I have a set of them. They have beads around them.
Right.
It's going to cause it to move at times. But that just people were doing that. I thought that was quite interesting. That was an old-fashioned tool that people were seeming to use a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. There were people there with periscope things, whatever they are, with the lights and all this stuff. And, there were people there with SLS cameras. And I basically talked to the one group that had one. And I'm like, do you guys always lead the person who's on camera to what's going on? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I overheard when you guys were in that room, you said it's on your shoulder and it's tapping your head. Do you feel anything on your head? Now, luckily, the person was like, no. But you led the person now to think there's something tapping on their head. So now you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I can feel it. Because psychologically, you're going to now think that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But the person said no. But that's besides the point. And we went back down to the bowling alley and we set up some stuff and, put the camera out and just kind of filmed down the bowling alley. Of course, there were people at the end of the bowling alley, so it's a bunch of video of them playing with dowsing rods. But then we were like sitting there and we were both just like, there's two doorways. There's a section of wall, two doorways, and the one doorway goes towards the bathroom that we were in earlier. And we went through the doorway, and I have the K2 out. And as we start going towards the bathroom doorway, there's no door there anymore, it's just an opening. Hold on, I got to go back to the beginning on that. When we were down there with that other group, and the K2 and the millimeter were going off, when we first walked in the room, we had checked the stall doors. There's two stalls in that bathroom. Both the stall doors were closed. We were sitting on the opposite side of the room from the stalls. Those people were midway in the room. None of us recall somebody walking over to the stalls and opening the doors. Went to leave the room when we were going on to the next section of the building. Both the bathroom stall doors were open. Could have been somebody, honestly. There was about 6 of us in that room. Can't account for all 6 of us the whole time we were in the room.
Right.
I know, Gary and I didn't do it. We were sitting next to each other across the room from them. So when we went to leave the room, it was quite interesting that the stall doors were open. So fast forward to later when we're down there and we're in the bowling alley, we go to walk through the doorway and towards the bathroom doorway. All of a sudden, K2 goes crazy again. So I'm like, okay, I am going to sweep every inch of this hallway, above me, below me, walls. Walk down the hall with the K2 and I'm running it right up against the walls, down at the base of the wall, up the other wall, down the other side, on the ceiling, going back and forth as I'm walking on the ceiling like I was painting the ceiling. Nothing. Go down all the way down the other side of the hall to nothing. Running around the door frame thinking maybe there's a wire inside the door frame that they have hooked up. Because again, you're on camera the entire time you're in the building. So I'm thinking, could this be a little setup type thing, generate interest? Start sweeping, looking around, checking all this stuff. Nothing's going on. Bring the K2 back down to waist height, and I'm standing there. All of a sudden, the K2 starts going off again. So I walk through the doorway. Walk in. We start asking questions. We're just asking question after question after question, given time in between each one, but just asking questions. Stops dead. No light, nothing. Go around the bathroom again, sweep the entire inside of the bathroom. Nothing's kicking on the K2. Start walking back towards the doorway to leave, holding the K2. We're stopped and we just, we were talking back and forth. All of a sudden the K2 is spiking again. Now, this honestly could have been psychological. It's hot as hell in there. It's humid. It is not, even in the basement where the bowling alley is, it's still very warm. Holding the K2, it's going off. My arm, just one arm, froze. Hair is standing up, goosebumps. Just one side of my body, just my arm from here to here is frozen. Stops then randomly. Felt perfectly fine. But we spend probably 45 minutes between that doorway and that little piece of hallway. The K2 would just randomly spike. Now, I'm not talking 3 lights. I'm talking 4 to the 5th light and holding and then going away. And then up. So one of the things I say, with that area especially for future investigations, I would like to get some other electromagnetic field reading equipment like the millimeters and stuff like that. Maybe a couple different K2s, whatever we can find that could measure that stuff, and just set them up and see if you're not getting cross-pollination where it's setting off both types of devices.
Right.
Then it's, really trying to debunk, well, what could it be in that room?
Yeah.
Like I said, I thought you're on camera the whole time. What's to say they don't have some kind of little pump thing wired in that they flick it on every so often, it creates a spike, and then they shut it off quick, and it, we got something going on here.
Well, look at that EM pump that we have, and we tested it, how it makes everything react. You know what I mean? You turn that thing on, and your readings start spiking, because obviously it's creating energy, Yeah. But
a magnet spinning around. It's a giant vibrator with a blue light, let's be honest.
Pretty much.
It makes a little rumble sound.
To your point, I mean, if they have some kind of a switch where they, something that amplifies energy, it's a pay to play place. And I'm not saying that's what they do. I'm just saying, that, in order to bring people back, you have to have some sort of a wow factor. So are they cheating and putting, triggers around? That's what you're looking for,
Yeah. I couldn't find anything, but like I said, you are on camera. If there is something there that they do, I'm not saying that they do, but is it something that was flicked on? They see you start looking around to try to figure out what it is, they flick it off. You get off that path for a little bit, all of a sudden they flick it back on. But the thing is it was happening at different heights and at different spots throughout that section of hallway. Like the boiler room is down from it. Once or twice, as you would walk towards the boiler room, it would start going off. And one time in the boiler room, it went off crazy, but not like it was in the hallway, not like it was in the bathroom. So it definitely, was interesting.
Right.
Not saying it was paranormal. As when you're looking for interesting occurrences while you're investigating, that was a definitely interesting area. I didn't actually have the device that Les and I got that does all that stuff. I had my thermal gun with me, and it was about 73 in the basement in different spots, which is unusual because usually it's about 65 underground. It was 73. And I don't know what the humidity was, but I can tell you from the amount I sweated, it was pretty high.
Yeah. We actually have like 3 or 4 of these small little portable battery operated temperature gauges. It gives you the temperature in Fahrenheit and Celsius, which, we usually just keep it in Fahrenheit. And it also measures the humidity level and so on and so forth. So what we usually do is, as we're going around setting things up, we place them in different rooms and the different levels. And that way we kind of get a general reading of especially the quote hot spots of a certain location. Like even when we investigate residentials for people that call us in, all right, well, what room do you feel the most activity is taking place? Oh, well, this, the back bedroom. So we'll put one in the back bedroom. We'll put one, randomly, like maybe in a hallway upstairs to see if there's any kind of a difference, or maybe in an adjacent room. And then we'll put them on different floors of the house as well, just to see if there is any kind of huge increase. Like if one room, if there's two rooms in the back of a house that are right next to each other, and one room has, an average temp throughout the rest of the house, but the other one is like 20 degrees colder. Well, they're both in the same part of the house, and they're getting this generally the same amount of sunlight. Well, why is this one so much colder? And that's when we start putting more focus into other areas of what might be causing such an increase or decrease, and so on and so forth. But yes, to your point, Joey, you're right. We do use those things, but he didn't have them because they're in my toolbox.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely that was one interesting area. And we spent a good I think we spent a total, including the earlier time, probably about 2 hours, 2.5 hours down in the basement in that area. Very interesting. There's stuff that they give you throughout the night to lead you into certain ideas, like sitting in the alcoholics wing. They basically, in the middle of the alcoholics wing, they have a big meeting area, which would have been like an AA meeting room. And then there are drunk tanks off the side of that room, and then there's the autoclave and stuff was down the hallway, what they call the dragon room and stuff like that. And at one point while we were actually doing the guided tour, we had kind of just sat in the meeting area. We sat there, like we walked around the dragon room and stuff like that. It wasn't really that interesting. It didn't have any kind of like real, feel to it, or no urge to investigate that little area. And there was a couple, at that point you're on a tour, so there were a good number of people. So we kind of went back to the alcoholics meeting area and sat, and it got so deathly quiet in there. Now, there were people 20, 30 foot away from us down the hallway, but it got so quiet you couldn't even hear the road noise outside. Like there is a road not that far from it. There you can hear outside noise at times. But it was so quiet. At one point we were actually sitting there and we looked at each other and we're like, what time were we moving to the next area? Because I kind of think they forgot us. Yeah. And we actually were sitting there with another family had come in and sit with us at that time. It was a father, mom, daughter, and son that, they were kind of family ghost hunting. And they were sitting with us and they're like, yeah, it is really strangely quiet. So I see a flashlight come down the hall. So I'm like, okay, there's somebody coming this way. So the guide comes back in. She's like, oh, yeah. We're like, we almost thought you forgot us. And she's like, no, I haven't forgotten anybody recently. And I'm like, oh, great. Recently? And she's like, once or twice we've accidentally lost a person or two that we've had to find. I'm like, great. So she's like, oh, so I said to her, is it always so quiet in this room? And she's like, quiet? And I'm like, yeah, like you can't hear you guys down the hallway. I said, if I wouldn't have saw your flashlight, I wouldn't have known you guys were coming down the hallway. And she's of course, no, usually there's a guy that, talks in the doorway. There's usually a guy that talks in the doorway. Yeah, he must have been an alcoholic or something like that because he's kind of slurry and rambly, but he talks a lot. And I'm like, okay, this is like the second thing she said to me that kind of was like lead you to believe this is, something special. I did not notice anybody or hear anybody talking standing in that doorway. So they're leading you. Now, we go to another section which was where the suicide bathroom and all is, and the pink bathroom and the green bathroom. And of course, if you looked at the photos, there's a photo of me laying in the green bathtub. Because of course I asked, with the bathtubs, is there any, stuff with the bathrooms and stuff like that? And they're like, oh yeah, well, the suicide bathroom, and they give you the story that the 4 or 7 suicides that have happened there. But if you go to the green bathtub, people who sit in that sometimes have things happen. And sometimes they see stuff in the mirror. And the girl tells me, yeah, one person sat in it and they saw themselves age as they were sitting there. So of course I'm like, I'm so laying in this bathtub. So I climb in the bathtub, and I put my arms up on it is a nice bathtub too, by the way. Long, very spacious. I put my arms up. I'm like the Calgon commercial. Calgon, take me away. And I'm just laying in this tub. And I laid in there for about 20 minutes. Ain't nothing happening. It was a bathtub. And there's no mirror in that room. Don't know what mirror they were referring to, but there is no mirror in that bathroom. They're all gone.
Huh.
Sat in the tub, nothing. Walked around, went up in a few of the other rooms, up into the suicide bathroom, stuff like that. That, of course, it is free roaming time, but everybody kind of headed there as like a second, like, you saw everybody kind of dart for the basement, and then half the people realized, like, well, if they're going to the basement, let's go upstairs.
Yeah.
So when we went up there, it was kind of busy up there, and there were people with all kinds of light up devices and stuff going, and cameras and all that stuff. So I was like, I'm not going to interfere with what they're trying to do. But I didn't really take notice to much in the bathroom. It's a bathroom. Though we sat in the female ward, the pink rooms, and sitting, it's kind of like just a big room, and there's I don't want to say they were cells, but there were rooms for the patients off. So basically they were cells. They didn't have cages, they had metal doors. But they have them all open except for one, which is a section where stuff has fallen in on it. So they don't let you in. But there's a nurse's station in that room.
Uh-huh.
And it's, kind of like when you first walk in the room, it's a nurse's station and a shower and a little like changing area and stuff like that. And then it's all the pods for the people who would have been there. So we were sitting at the far end of the room, and you would kind of, that out of the corner of your eye type stuff, where you'd kind of see something like move out of the corner of your eye in a doorway or something like that. And you'd kind of be like looking over, and you'd be sitting there staring and shining flashlights in and stuff like that. But just the nurse's station, you could kind of hear like a squeak every so often.
Yeah.
Almost like that old-fashioned like office chair squeak. That like,
Yeah.
that squeak.
Yeah.
You could hear that every so often. There's no office chair in there, but you'd hear it. Could it be something, somewhere else in the building, above you, below you, outside the big metal door, that you just happen to be hearing? Yeah, it could be. But it's odd because people have gotten EVPs in there of what sounds like a nurse telling them stuff, almost like giving report for when they change shifts. People have also claimed to have seen a nurse walking the ward, like walking down, looking in the windows of the rooms back to the nurse's station at times. I didn't see it, but people report this, of course, and of course that comes from guides who are getting you to, giving you places to go while you're there to keep you excited to kind of, oh, people see a nurse walking down this hall. So it was interesting. A couple of times when we were in there, the K2 would go off and stuff like that. And, some other people that came in and were sitting with us and stuff like that had, equipment that would do stuff and, but nothing major. In the morgue, there was an interesting occurrence. We were in the actual morgue room with the drain in the floor and stuff like that, where they would, take care of the bodies. But there was like cold rooms around them. So I guess it's pretty much for storage, either bodies or perishables, I guess. And that family that I had mentioned earlier, where it was a mom and dad, the son and daughter. Now, the son and daughter were teenagers. Mom and dad were probably late 40s, early 50s. We're in the room a little bit. If you're facing the doorways, we would have been in the room to the far right and back a little, and they were to the left, and in the one room, the door would have been on this side. And you heard the dad and the daughter shriek like horror movie noise. And we come out of the room we're in, and we're like shining a flashlight over where they are. Like, we walked over quick and we're like, "You guys okay?" And they're like, were you guys just out in the hallway? And we're like, "No, we were in the morgue." And they're like, "So you guys weren't just in the hallway? Like, somebody, you didn't just like peek around the door, did you?" And we're like, "No, we heard you scream and then we came over because we thought something happened." And they're like, something or somebody was peering around the door at us. And they're like, the door actually started to move, like just a little bit. Now you got to realize these are heavy steel doors.
Now, was there anybody else around, or was it just the two of you and the two of them?
The four of them, two of us.
Oh, okay.
As far as we knew, there was nobody else over there, because there's another big steel door that you have to open, and it makes a lot of noise when you open it. So as far as we know, we were the only 6 people in that section. Not saying that it couldn't have been somebody else.
Yeah, or just their imagination.
Yeah. And then, without seeing it for yourself and documenting it and being able to try to, get some kind of real proof of it, but it was interesting. Again, it's an occurrence that happens while you're in a, allegedly haunted building.
Another reason why those POV glasses are a handy tool. Imagine 2 people saw it, right? The dad and the daughter. Imagine if they both were wearing those and they had looked over and boom, you could have at least played back and say, all right, well, let's see if we can see what you saw. Yeah. And if there's nothing there, then, obviously it had to have been some sort of an imaginary thing, or it just wasn't caught on tape.
Yeah. Now, I did use my POV glasses for a little bit of it. The problem was it was so humid, it was fogging them up. So it was very hard to keep them on my face long enough to be wearing them. I wore them for a little bit. I'll have to try to put the video up on Facebook when I get some time. I don't know if there's anything in it, really. It's just, video of walking around with them on. But it was, they just kept fogging.
Well, we have hit our 2-hour mark, and before we go off air, I want to ask, what do you think we would need to do based off your assessment and your time there? Where are the areas you think we need to hit or put most of our attention to, and what all do you think we would need to bring, and how many people?
I would definitely say the bowling alley, that downstairs area. A lot of alleged activity, personal experience down there. A lot of things very interesting. Can't really debunk, have ideas to what it could be, but don't have any proof to support those ideas. So I would definitely say that area.
Mm-hmm.
The upstairs where like the suicide bathroom and stuff would be interesting to kind of sit and observe what goes on in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
The grand staircase area in the hallway would be interesting. It's just a very big hallway with a grand staircase, and definitely something. It's a large area, and would definitely be somewhere to put a camera, kind of have an idea what's going on in there. As far as people, you could legitimately have a team of 10 people and disperse yourself in such a way that you would not be contaminating anybody else's research area.
Okay.
It's big enough to support. I mean, there was at least 25 to 50 people in there from midnight to 4 a.m. You very seldom ran into anybody else. In fact, you usually end up being more startled because you ran into a living human being than anything else that happened while you were there. In fact, I almost fell down the steps because I got to the top of the steps and saw the glowing outline of a person and kind of forgot there was other people in the building besides us. But yeah, you could definitely have 10 people in that building working on different floors. You could jump up and down on the floor above them and not cause sound on the next level.
Okay, cool. That's a good thing to know, because I'd like to, like, if we were able to get 10 people to come down with us, like 5 groups of 2, and just go all throughout the building, but try and make sure we're spaced out enough where we're not going to contaminate.
Oh yeah, you definitely, there's so much workable space in there. And I mean, there are rooms and sections that we really didn't investigate because we just didn't really find them as interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like the alcoholics area. We sat in the meeting room of it. Didn't really see anything except for it got so deathly quiet in there that it kind of was interesting that all of a sudden, you couldn't hear people down the hall from you. That's where they have the autoclave and stuff like that, is right down the hallway, the dragon room and stuff like that. That's where the the electroshock therapy room's off there too. No, that's downstairs. Yeah, that's downstairs. The electroshock therapy room would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The actual superintendent's living quarters would be very interesting. One of the things I found interesting was, they don't have records of lobotomies being done there. Not saying they weren't, and a lot of the staff feels like they were done there. They just couldn't find records of it because it was a standard medical practice. But the actual Dr. King, who started it, him and his family lived in the building with patients.
Ugh.
So the dark history, well, it's one of the things I learned as I spoke to one of the ladies who actually grew up right behind the building, in the street, road behind it. And she actually eyewitnessed several people hanging in the upstairs garden area. She said there was quite a few times in their childhood they would be driving by and they'd see somebody up there hanging by their neck.
Ugh.
But like she actually explained a lot to me about the actual history. I'd love to have. I actually asked them if one of them would come on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to clear it with the owner and the manager of the place, which are brother and sister. And I actually have a good relationship with the managing partner of it, about coming on and talking with us about the actual history of the building. It's not as dark as it's portrayed. And from the stuff that we had researched and stuff like that, to actually learn from people that grew up around the building, like the fact that Dr. King actually lived with his family inside the building. Like their their living quarters is inside the building. There are patient rooms off of their living quarters that aren't separated with they weren't separated with big steel doors. They were freely able to come through their house and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Now there were people that were kept and locked behind steel doors and stuff like that, but there were people that had gained, access to the upper floor and stuff like that, who had rooms up there, who could just come and go as they pleased throughout the room, worked on the farm outside and stuff like that.
That's pretty crazy. And there's no way I would want to raise my family around that kind of an environment. So I guess in conclusion, your overall kind of thought feeling, do you think it warrants us going down, first of all?
I do.
Okay.
I've had two different experiences there. I've had the don't go in there, don't want to be there, something doesn't want you here feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had I actually explained it as I was not scared or didn't feel fear or anxiety the entire night I was there.
Mm-hmm.
It actually felt warm and welcoming.
Interesting.
It actually felt inviting. Like it wanted you in the building. Like it didn't have this dread or fear, but I've been there before and physically felt like it did not want me there. Felt like, something trying to keep me away from there.
Right.
So it was definitely, it had a warm feeling to it, and it invited, it wants to, if there is something there, it wants to communicate with you, and not in a scary, grave encounters type of way, but in a, hey, this is where I spent my life, or I spent time, and, I just kind of want to be heard.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it would be an interesting location to investigate. It's sheer size of the building, the history of the building being that it was Native American, fights and stuff happened on there, early settlers, Civil War battle,
it's definitely got the history. Yeah, that's for sure.
Or a school, a sanitarium, a regular hospital. So it definitely has a lot of history, and it's definitely a very interesting building. And I definitely think it's worth investigating.
Well, that sounds good to me, and hopefully we could get everything together and get a big enough team assembled. I know we have a lot of people that had volunteered to take the trip down there and help us out. So hopefully we get that plan that is on the top of our list to get down for there. I mean, we also have another location in Gettysburg, our go-to place. This time we want to hit the Jenny Wade house, or her sister's house that they call the Jenny Wade house. We want to hit that up too, because that was one of the locations in Gettysburg that we did not do a private investigation in. Before we get off the air, one thing I do want to ask is that anybody who listens to our show, please click. I'm putting a link in the comments section here, if you guys don't mind to check out. Click the link to our iTunes channel, or whatever you want to call it, in the podcast sections of iTunes. And if you can, please just give us a 5-star rating if you like the show. We really want to try and build up our our awareness on iTunes, so people could find us on there. Because I guess with iTunes, it doesn't matter if you're on it or not. You have to have a certain amount of ratings in order to get categorized or placed on any kind of a search. Like if you search for Bigfoot or ghosts or paranormal or whatever, you get a slew of podcasts out there, and we're trying to be one of them, so we could share our show with more people out there. So again, like I said, if you anybody you know that's into this kind of stuff. Share our Facebook page. Click that link. Please give us that 5-star review if you don't mind. It costs nothing but time and generosity. We do plan on coming back next week. Not sure what the topic is. I think we're going to be talking about the American Dyatlov Pass, if I'm not mistaken. We're still trying to pull together some information on that so we can really build out a good show. Other than that, thank you all for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Chad, thank you as always for being my best friend and co-host. And you got anything else you'd like to say? Or anything you would like to say, since I went on forever?
Like Les said, if you wouldn't mind, give us a good rating on iTunes, and share anything that you find interesting with your friends, and share the page, whatever. Greatly appreciate it. And I do believe, yes, I'm putting the finishing touches on the American Dyatlov Pass story, so it'll be an interesting one, at least. I mean, I hope. It is not our normal forte of the mystery or anything like that, but it's definitely an interesting story. It does fit with the episode prior to that, with the actual Dyatlov Pass story and stuff like that. So once in a while, it's neat to stretch our legs and kind of do a mystery, unsolved mystery type, in search of type story that isn't paranormal, cryptozoology, or ufology related. So, once in a while, it's nice to stretch our legs. But we will be coming back after that with, some stuff on spectral kids, since it's back to school time. And, you also got to think it's back to school time. It's almost Halloween. So we'll definitely be having our traditional Halloween episode that hopefully this year I don't have to edit any parts out of the post. But so we'll be doing some stuff for that. We'll be building up, and hopefully we might have some guests coming on in probably the next 3-4 weeks. We'll probably have a guest on. And Les,
I forgot about that.
The story we no longer speak of.
Oh boy.
What was it, about 13 episodes in, and we had an episode we don't speak of? It's out there. It's edited.
All right, man. Well, good night, my friend. Good night, everyone, and thank you all for tuning in.
Yep. Night, everybody.